Hi there, I'm Eric Wordweaver Sjerven, Gothi of the Ridgar folk here in East Texas, and I'd like to welcome you to The Raven's Call. This is a show where I ramble on about different heathen-related subjects that just come across my mind, or that you guys request either in the comments below on my videos or on Facebook at Wordweaver Productions. That's an open group. Jump on there and join in the conversation if you want to make requests for videos such as this, alright? So, today's subject I want to talk just briefly, very, very briefly, introductory, on heathen weddings. Okay, this is something that I could do like an hour-long video on, talking about specifics and coaching people through things. I'm going to try and give you a primer so that you can kind of just get a gist of where my headspace is on heathen weddings. Now keep in mind, this is based on my research that I've done, which is reading through Edda's, sagas, different accounts, things like that, interpreting what I see, looking at things that have been passed down, and elements like that. Okay, so here's the deal. And the only reason I bring this up is because I've had a number of people over the years ask me about conducting a heathen wedding. And usually my answer to that is, sure, I can conduct a heathen wedding legally, but you don't need me to. Nobody needs me to. And here's why, okay? Here is why. There is a misconception in the Western world, based on Judeo-Christian, mostly, influences, that a wedding between two individuals is something that is between them and their divinity, and that it is a holy, sacred ritual, blah, 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 blah. This is incorrect, essentially. Marriage, in and of itself, marriage is a social contract, creating a social construct of family. Marriage is an agreement between two individual social constructs, i.e. two families, that they will bind together through the individuals tied in this marriage to meld the families into a clan, into one, joined familial clan. So, it's a social deal. The gods and goddesses honestly don't care if you're married to the person that you're with. That's not their purview. There's not some writ in heathenry somewhere that says, thou shalt not shack up. Odin he's got kind of a promiscuous side to him. Freya, she gets around. Sexuality is something that's very much embraced in a lot of ways, and in other ways, culturally, if you look back at arch-heathen times, it was suppressed in a lot of ways. It just depends on the context, the when, the wheres, and all of that. But the gist is that marriage is not the purview of the gods. Marriage is the purview of society and culture. It is a legal status more than anything else. It is of man. It is an oath exchanged between two individuals that they are going to join their lives to work together to build their future together. They tie their weird together in such a way that, when we look at weird and we look at people that are going through their lives, we weave a tapestry with everyone that we interact with. Our thread interacts with their thread, and then we weave back to this one, and it comes together to create this tapestry that it becomes all of our orlog, where we've been and what we're doing, the energies lead up to the now. So our weird is constantly interacting and threading back and forth. When marriage occurs, you braid those weird lines together. You make a thicker, stronger rope by binding those threads of weird together inseparably, at least for the time period that they're together. Marriage was not permanent necessarily in the olden days. There's plenty of accounts of divorce, and Northern Europe, at least during the Viking Age and some before, had some fairly progressive views on how that could be handled, and especially with the rights of women with respect to divorce. Don't believe all the memes that you see online. Yes, it is true that women enjoyed more freedoms and more rights under the Northern European cultures than in a lot of other areas in the world at that time, comparatively speaking. But not all the memes you see online are 100% accurate. Yes, there were a lot of provisions in place, especially in Old Icelandic law before and after the Viking Age, wherein women had rights upon divorce, property, things like that. Awesome stuff that gave way to some really awesome stuff later on. But not everything you read is accurate in how it was handled at the time, okay? So, the gist of all of that is that even our ancestors accepted the fact that sometimes these things needed to be dissolved, okay? And that's where we differ with some of the more westernized society, Judeo-Christian influenced elements of, this is an oath before their deity and therefore it cannot be broken and it cannot be released without his blessing, blah, 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 blah. That's got nothing to do with it. This is a business arrangement between two individuals. And it's not, don't let me wash it out and take the romance out of it. I'm just looking from a sociological standpoint that this is an agreement between individuals that we're going to bind together these social constructs into one singular social construct. That's the essence of what the ritual of marriage entails. You've got people who oath to other people to bind themselves together. Okay, so marriage is not the gods granting you permission to be married, blah, blah, blah. The gods don't care whether you marry or not. That's not their purview. Now, your ancestors care because your ancestors want to see you carry on the family line. They want to see you build the legacy of the family. They want to see you tie the family to other strong families. That's going to perpetuate their name. It's going to perpetuate their line and keep their legacy alive. That's what your ancestors want to see. So, of course, they're going to be more invested in you getting married and kind of what that looks like. But it's not necessarily the purview of the gods. That being said, my point in all of that is that you do not need a priest to conduct a wedding. Now, I know legally you have to have someone who is ordained in order to officiate the wedding. Here's the key term. They have to officiate it. They don't necessarily have to conduct it. Okay? That's a thing. All right? Now, keep in mind, because we're going to come back to it later, you can get legally ordained by going online and going through, I think it's the ULC, Universal Life Church, as well as some others that don't care what denomination you are, they don't care what deity you worship or acknowledge, just that you do. And then you can be ordained and legally can marry and bury the whole 9 yards, You are clergy at that point. So you don't need some Gothi program to go through and become legally ordained to do these things, okay? That's a holdover from a culture that's not ours. So it's not mine anyway. So this is how I see, and I'll try to make this as brief as possible. This is how I see a heathen wedding occurring and what the trappings look like, okay? Now, I'm going to go back to olden days and we're going to use the whole traveling families thing. We can transpose this into the modern era, but I'm going to give it some context of like Viking era-esque, just because I like the way that it looks, the feasting and all of that. It's easier than trying to put it in modern terms. So, in the olden days, bride and groom would decide that they're going to get married. Usually at the time it was an arranged marriage between the two families that were making ties to bind the families together to strengthen either their financial standings or their holdings or to tie themselves to stronger families. There's a lot of that going on. But there's also elements of choice. There were laws in place where a woman, after having been arranged marriage so much that after that she could marry for love kind of thing. It's a regional thing, it's a cultural thing, it just depends and varies. But even in today's society, A and B decide they're going to get married. This does tie the in-laws together because they are the in-laws. Parents-in-law on either side, brother and sister-in-law. It ties the families together through this unified family. Husband and wife come together if they have kids, and those kids are the embodiment of both family lines. And so in that, they are unified. Their weirds have come together into a singular family line. Okay, so A and B decide they're going to come together and they're going to get married. Whether that's arranged or not, who cares at this point, all right? A and B are going to get married. Husband and wife, groom, bride. And so the bride's family, traditionally, would travel to the groom's family because the groom's family would host a feast. and it was the wedding feast, the bridal feast. They would put on a grand spread full of food and beer and ale and all of this. They'd put on a feast, a festival, and they would invite the family and retainers of the bride to come in mass to the feast. They would gather together at the feast, and the bride and groom would sit at the high seat, the high table, in a layout, usually in a U-shaped kind of layout. They'd have the center high seat with either family branch being on either side. And then they would stand before the gathered family and they would oath to one another. And usually they would do it in a toast over a horn. Now in modern days, we can do that in the form of, like we would in Sumble. We would share a horn full of mead. We'd both say an oath over it. And then we would be bound by that oath, because the oath is the thing. The oath is the actual social contract, the arrangement. And so the wording of the oath is important. This is why vows were so important. This is the essence of vows. I mean, in a lot of Western society stuff, the vows are pretty things that you promise, but it all adheres to kind of the Judeo-Christian version of marriage. And then if your marriage deviates from that snapshot, then you're kind of ostracized, at least here in the United States. It's kind of weird that way. We're getting better with it, but it's kind of, we're kind of backwards in a lot of ways on that. But that's not necessarily the way that it was for our ancestors, You come together, you oath, and this binds the families together. This is a legal proceeding, because you have the witnesses. Even in modern marriage, like legal marriage, like if you were just going to go to the justice of the peace to get married, what are the elements you have to have there? An officiator, the two individuals getting married, and witnesses. Because an oath is sworn between the two individuals in front of the officiator, and the witnesses bear witness. Welcome to a heathen wedding. This is what it is. The feast is simply the format, the ritual in which we do it. The two individuals stand up and they swear their oath. All right? Now, the family bears witness, and someone bears a legal witness to stand up and say, yes, this oath is legally binding and it is good. That's what an officiator does. And in the olden days, that wasn't even necessary, because the government didn't get involved in marriage. It was just between the families. So the government didn't need to be involved, didn't need an officiator. Don't for a second think that, the officiator, as far as that goes, is anything other than either the government or a church getting involved in your business. For the legal status of marriage, you got to have it, at least in the United States. I don't know about overseas in different cultures there, but in the United States, you got to have an officiator who signs the wedding certificate, thusly declaring, as he signs that certificate, that the wedding he has borne witness to is indeed a good and legal wedding, and that these individuals are legally married. It doesn't mean he had to declare it. I mean, he can declare it. He has to declare the legality of the proceedings, but it doesn't mean that he had to actually stand there and, do you take so-and-so, blah, 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 blah. That's a church thing, okay? All the officiator does is stand here and say, swear your oath, okay? I recognize this oath is legally binding, and therefore, in the eyes of the law, you are now married. Boom! Officiated. So, that's the essence on heathen weddings the same way. Feast is gathered. Everybody comes together. Husband and wife stand up. They say their oath. In the modern day, you can have an officiator, someone within the family units that is agreed upon as a good third party to do this. They can be ordained, and then their job is to, once the oaths are sworn, stand up and say, I recognize this oath is legally valid and good. These two are now married. Boom. Done. That's all it takes. And then the feast, the celebration of life and continuation. Here's what's going on there, all right? Oaths involve everyone who bears witness just as much as they do those that swear the oaths, okay? Your weird is shared across this oath, and the weird of all these witnesses is boiled down into it as well. So, all of the witnesses are tied together. So they have a vested interest in this marriage working, just the same as the individuals who are swearing the oaths have a vested interest in this marriage working. Now, keeping in mind there are legal proceedings that can annul this. You can be released from the oath. In the olden days, legally, once the law got involved in things, you had to have proceedings for dissolving marriages and things like that. Before the law got involved, all you had to do was just, we're not going to do this anymore, and split, Somewhere along the way, the law got involved. I was like that in old Iceland, too. There were laws, obviously, about divorce and proceedings and things like that. Not necessarily to the level that we have them now, but at the time there were, especially during the era of conversion and law books that come thereafter and somewhat before. So, this is the gist. Now, as far as individual trappings go, that's up to the individual, because the only legally binding element is that an oath has to be sworn between the individuals, borne witness to by gathered individuals, and the legality sworn to, or verified by the officiator. That's it. As far as in the United States goes, that's all you got to have. And you're good to go. You're married at that point. Of course, we also have common law marriages and things like that. That after a certain point of just going around and saying we're married long enough, guess what? You're legally married. It's just how it works. So we have things in place for that. But it's important for those individuals that want to have a legally binding marriage, that don't want to do the Celtic hand fasting ceremony, that don't want to do a Judeo-Christian church wedding. They want to do something uniquely heathen. And they're worried about the cost, okay? Here's the thing. A heathen wedding doesn't have to cost anything in the modern day. You can literally do a heathen wedding in a crowded restaurant if you want to. I wouldn't recommend it. I would prefer, at somebody's home around a dinner table kind of thing, or in a, rented hall if you've got that kind of money. But again, we're talking about people that don't necessarily have a lot of money. You can do it in the front yard around a picnic table, as long as you've got the right elements in place. It just needs to suit what you need and what you want. The trappings are what you make of them. But gather everyone together for a feast. Get the family together. In the modern scheme of the Western, weirdly secular / Judeo-Christian wedding that we have seen grow up in the area, it's a weird conglomeration of them. You essentially have, traditionally, the rehearsal dinner preceding the actual proceedings, which the rehearsal dinner is a chance to rehearse the wedding and then, of course, go and feast together. Here's the thing. That's all you need for the heathen wedding. You don't need a rehearsal dinner. That's the thing. Get together for dinner, share a meal, and then swear the oaths in front of the gathered folk that are bearing witness. Have the officiated there to sign and date the marriage certificate. And then enjoy a wonderful evening with friends and family celebrating this union, this recognition of love, this new chapter in a person's life. You don't have to be that picture-perfect wedding of a white dress in a sprawling lawn in a rose garden with, lilies and whatever, taffeta out the wazoo. It doesn't have to be that. All right, it doesn't. Now, it doesn't have to not be that either. You can still do that because the element is still there of an oath sworn between individuals, before witnesses and an officiator. Boom, you're still good. Part of the things that make the heathen element of a wedding, as far as that goes, is there's often an exchange of gifts. When we talk about the wedding ring, the ring itself is a representation of the oath ring. It is an embodiment of the oath that is sworn between the two. Now, of course, a lot of modern society is lost what that means. They don't get the concept of an oath ring. In the olden days, an oath ring would have been a singular iron or silver ring that was worn by the Gothi of an area, and oaths were sworn upon it, and it was held aloft, usually used in all rituals and things like that. So, they don't get the concept of an oath ring being a binding thing. When you actually exchange the rings, I mean, think about every other wedding you've ever seen, and they hold the ring to put it on the finger, and they swear their oath. You're swearing on an oath ring to love and protect this person, all the things that you say in your oath. So the wording of your vows is incredibly important, and you're gifting them the physical manifestation of your oath. That's what the oath ring is. They carry this as the token that is an embodiment of the oath. It is the reminder of the oath. At any point in time, they can give it back to you and release you from your oath. Then there's the legal part of being divorced. But as far as, the real world applicable part of divorce, that's where it's at. You are released from your oath to me, and we are no longer beholden to one another. So, that's why the mechanics are important. Okay, so the rings are exchanged as gifts. There's also, if you look at some of the research, some interesting things as far as the exchange of gifts between bride and groom. The element being that the bride will frequently give the husband a sword or a weapon of some kind that symbolizes the protection of the home. The husband will frequently give the wife a set of keys that shows his trust in her to handle the running of the household, the management of the business of the family. He will do the outside work if she'll handle the home for it, because only through the two working together can that function. Now, of course, in modern day, those gender roles don't necessarily apply to everyone in every situation. But the element there of the exchange of gifts is important. You're binding weird further. You're establishing these things. Those gifts that you give bear special meaning because they're the gifts you gave at the wedding. So the sword then becomes more important. The keys are symbolic. It's the symbolism behind the thing. So there's an exchange of gifts there. There's also the sharing of the horn, which is the well of weird over which the oath is typically sworn. And the idea behind this, of course, is that the horn itself represents the well of weird and ritualizes the oath so that those words are then recorded into the well of weird more directly. It makes a strong binding element to the weird at the moment. So, and then there are other trappings that you can go on about, music, celebration, things like that. But the individual trappings are up to you. I have seen heathen weddings that were grandiose. My first marriage was grandiose. It was in a backyard, mind you, but it was still grandiose. I have seen marriages that are just as simple as individuals sitting around a table with the nearest and dearest to them to bear witness as they swear their oaths to one another, exchange their gifts, and then celebrate the evening amidst those that they love. Not spending thousands and thousands of dollars on a wedding that, is more stress than it's actually wonderful, in a lot of cases. Now, I have seen people who have the big grandiose day, and it's the greatest day of their lives because the girl has dreamed about it since she was young. It's her moment to be special, to be a princess, etc., etc. Cool. I mean, if that's what works for you, that works for you. Cool. That doesn't make it any less heathen. Now, you can drape it in heathen trappings, heathen cultural elements, Nordic influenced artwork, and things like that. Of course, you can do these things. But it's not necessary. It's not necessary to be a heathen wedding. All it is a representation of your tribe, your folk, and the binding of your two families together. Now, I've had some people ask me about eloping because they don't want to deal with families. Here's my thing, all right? There's an honor extended to the family in being present and bearing witness to this binding, because the binding does tie the weird together of individuals that are present to A, bear witness, and B, take part in the oath. And you're talking about the binding of these two individual families. Is it always 100% appropriate? No, not everybody's got a great relationship with their families. I'm not going to assume that it's going to be that way. But if you do have a decent relationship with your family, I highly recommend the presence of at least the immediate family with the wedding ceremony, because it does extend to them an honor to be involved in this. It honors them, to show them that you appreciate them, to respect them and have them present. And it strengthens your bond in this wedding, that it's not some clandestine thing. I'm actually not a fan of eloping in general, because I think the ritualization and the going through the motions on it, even if they're not the grandiose spectacle. I actually find that to be less meaningful than just the simple dinner exchange of oaths. This ritual, this meaningful, deep ritual is important. It's binding. It adds strength to it. Now, with relation to the gods and goddesses, because I did want to come back to that before we close this video up, with relation to the gods and goddesses in the presence of a wedding like this, it's not uncommon to call upon Lady Var, who is one of Frigga's handmaidens, to bear witness to oaths, to lend a blessing upon that. It's not uncommon to call upon Thor or Freya, to grant fertility to the bride. There's actually some attestation that there was a ritual of placing a hammer upon the bride's lap, much akin to, if you remember the story of the theft of Thor's hammer. He gets the hammer back by going through a false wedding with the giant that has stolen it, and then the giant places the hammer in Thor's lap to bless him for fertility, thinking that he's Freya, and he then, of course, takes the hammer and slays everybody. But there's some attestation that there was some belief in this, that the hammer could be used as a fertility symbol. So, and these elements are very important. So it's not uncommon to have some kind of a bloat or something like that dedicated to the gods, to thank them for their gifts, and to impart blessings upon the newly married couple. That part, totally cool. Again, doesn't necessarily require a legally ordained priest to be able to do that part. Whoever you have that, runs ritual for your tribe or your kindred or your family or whatever can do that part. The bride and groom can do it themselves. It doesn't matter. That's not a legal part. That's a religious part. So that's all about the interaction with the sacred and the profane worlds. So you're good there. But that's how you would involve the gods and goddesses, either to bear witness to the oath that is taking place and thusly bless it, or to, bless the couple with luck and strength in the aftermath of the marriage itself. So that element can be in there, as can be calling the ancestors to presence, that they may be included in the ritual of the marriage. These are elements that can be added in, but aren't necessarily legally required to be, nor is there any writ that says, according to what I've seen in research, that it's an element that has to be there. It's like if you look at some of the weddings of kings and whatnot in Heimskringla and some of the other sagas, or any of the families in Iceland and the Icelandic sagas, you don't see them necessarily call the ancestors to presence, set out an ancestor plate, things like that. But it's not outside the realm of our practice to do that. I would definitely do that if I were conducting a heathen wedding. I would set a place for the ancestors to involve them in this, because it involves them directly. I would probably involve some kind of blessing of the married couple by either Frigga, Freya, something like that, Hulda, if you wanted to be able to bless the family in their future ventures. And then similarly, I would probably call on Lady Var to bear witness, just to add some extra to the oath at play. So, but anyway, these are all elemental trappings that you can play with on your own. It's up to you. The essence of how a heathen wedding could look today would be as simple as the feast, with the exchange of vows and sharing the meal with those that bear witness. And it can be just that simple. Or it can be grand and, quite the spectacle. But that's the essence as far as I see it on heathen weddings. I know it's a bit rambling and stuff, and I went way over time on this one. Sorry, guys. I'll try and cut back later, unless y'all respond to my other thing that y'all like the length of the videos, and then we'll go with the longer videos. So anyway, you can't tell, I film these in batches, so the state of the channel address hasn't gone live yet, so I don't know where you guys land on this yet, but I still got to create content to get it out there, so I can keep the Wednesday schedule going for as long as I can. Eventually I may have to back off to every other Wednesday, but right now, Wordy Bastard's got plenty to say, so we're going to continue to rock along with it. So, thank you guys. If you liked what you saw today or any of my other videos, please subscribe to my channel. It helps out. Ding the bell so you stay up to date on everything. Watch the videos through if you can. Hit the thumbs up on them. interact with them, comment on them. Whatever you do to interact with the stuff helps to push the channel out there so other people can see it, so other newbies can get access to newbie information, and other heathens can see, you know, how this heathen at least does it and compare it to their own or whatever, how they want to do that. But interact with the videos. The more you do, the more heathen related stuff you're going to see in your feed by other heathens doing heathen stuff. So you can follow me on Facebook at Word-Weaver Productions. It's Word-Weaver Productions. Open group, so I'll add anybody that hits, you know, join. So that's how we communicate and how I get feedback from you guys and things like that. So please jump on in there and interact with the community so we can all help each other out in developing this channel to become what it needs to be. You can contact me on Twitter if you really want to laugh at how pathetic I am at Twitter. That's at @E_Sjerven. Hopefully by now I've added some kind of text down here in the bottom so that you can see that. Or is it over here? It flips the video when you use the front cam, so I'm not sure which one I'm on at the moment. You can email me at esjerven@gmail.com. And if you got some longer stuff that you want to bring up, if you're into the anonymous thing, you want to share some stuff without necessarily having your name tagged to it, send me some kind of weird, crazy message or something you're just, you know, not comfortable putting up on Facebook or on YouTube with your name attached to it. You can toss it in the Saraha link down there in the description. That'll help you to, you know, send me silly stuff, send me funny stuff, send me whatever. I don't care. I'll read everything. I try to comment on everything. I try to hit like on the video and all my comments on the videos and stuff like that. So interact, guys. Let me know. The feedback's how I do what I do and how we all keep track and how this channel develops into something, hopefully, that meets everybody's needs. So in the meantime, hail. Have a good day.